You know, one of the poultry enterprises that you do on farm here are turkeys. How have they worked out for you?
They've been great. They're a little more work than broilers, longer grow outs and stuff. They eat a lot more feed. But as far as an enterprise and a profitability standpoint, they've been great.
Those birds, being heritage breed, long time on farm, what are you getting for final weights post-processing on them?
I would say the hens are in the 7-pound range, the smallest birds, and the toms I've gotten 18 pounds.
18 pounds, so big birds. What are you able to sell them for here?
We sell the heritage for $9.50 a pound.
So $9.50 a pound, and that's going to blow people's minds. I think watching this, they'll say $9.50 a pound for turkey. How have you been able to do that? That's one struggle I think some people face in a world where, you know, Trader Joe's sells organic turkey for $2.99 a pound. You're 3x that. How's that happening?
You know, for us, we basically found, or we went after the people we knew that was important to. There's people that are diehard heritage turkey. There's people that are diehard organic. We're also doing corn and soy free. So we have a niche there, especially the corn and soy free. We've gotten calls from all over the country. We can't ship because of the processing, but so we've used another organic farm to market through, advertise through, and also through a farmer's market as well. So it's just going after, you know, those people that you know are interested in that. And there's a little bit of an educational process there too, to explain to them the difference in a store-bought, confined-raised turkey versus, you know, what us and other pasture farmers are doing. So yeah, there's been, I would say I haven't had anybody walk up to me and say, I want a turkey. Okay, that's $9.50 a pound. Okay, I'll take it. There's a little bit more to the conversation there, explaining everything that goes into that.
Yeah, I mean, you figure $9.50 a pound, even on the low side, you're talking a $75 bird. Mm-hmm. On the high side, you're talking a $200 bird, which is a pricey piece of meat. When you have these conversations, what is it that people you think value the most? Is it the corn and soy free? Is it the heritage? Or is it all of them, like you're saying?
I would say what they value the most is how we're doing it and what we're doing and why we're doing it. You know, we're doing it for a healthy product for them and us. So I think that that's important for them to find out how it was raised. You know, they don't want a confinement raised bird. So, you know, and heritage birds are just a little different. They taste a little different. You know, it's more of a pastured, roaming, flying bird. So it's a little bit different bird. So usually there's people that are looking specifically for a heritage turkey.
I think you were telling me before, like, didn't somebody call you and they were saying they had, you know, Google searched corn and soy free turkeys in Arizona, and you were like the only one that popped up?
Yeah, I think across the country there was, and I did some Googling too. Yeah, it was very limited, very limited. And, you know, and each state's got its own poultry regulations. So shipping, you know, it depends on how it was processed as far as whether it can cross state lines.
Right.
So.
You know, $9.50 a bird, people might say, wow, that's a lot and that's going to be super profitable. But these birds are on farm starting in April through October. That's a lot of months versus, say, like Darby, who might get his in late July and run them through the end of October. So you're talking another 3 months in there. At $9.50 a pound, how profitable are they for you?
Heritage are not as profitable as the broad-breasteds, and we've done those as well. And a heritage bird isn't full grown from April to November. You know, they can take up to a year to be full grown. So we don't get a full grow out where like the broad-breasteds are full grown in 4 to 5 months with 20+ pound range if you want. So the broad-breasteds are by far more profitable. The heritage birds consume, I think, I'd have to look at my numbers. I think over that time span, each bird consumed, I want to say, basically 40 or 45 pounds of feed per bird, and those, you know, those organic bags of turkey feed are $30-some a bag. So I couldn't tell you exactly what we profited off.
But you're making money on them.
Oh yeah.
You're making money on them, and you're processing those on farm.
Correct.
So how many did you raise this year?
33.
33. How is it processing turkeys versus processing broiler chickens? I'm sure a lot of people process broiler chickens. They might not have done turkey. What's been your experience? You've done them both.
A lot harder. Getting hit in the jaw with a turkey wing is like getting hit in the jaw with a fist. They're heavier, bigger, more active. I mean, I can take multiple broilers and put them in the cones and keep moving. Turkey, I kind of have to monitor. At that price, I can't afford an injured turkey. Even more so, the finished product having a bruise on it. So I don't want them flopping and freaking out and getting beat up in the holding cages or in the cones or anything like that. So they are definitely more time consuming.
So 33 birds yourself, how long does that take?
I did 2 days, I think, because it was by myself. I think I did 2 batches of I think one was 15 and then I did the rest the other time.
How do you find the plucking on the heritage turkeys?
It's more difficult because they're all the feathers are colored. So you get a dark turkey, a lot of that shows up, the pin feathers and stuff that you don't see on chickens and stuff like that are white. So, and that's kind of an educational process too. You're going, as I tell the customers, you're going to see a little bit of that, and here's why. So yeah, that does show up a little bit more.
Yeah, it's an interesting enterprise, and it's one that has shown to work well for you. And we're standing in the patch where your turkeys were this year. So this is one of their coops.
Correct.
And there's another coop here behind the camera. How have they been on this space, and how do you find they are on the grass versus chickens in terms of wear and tear on the grass?
Turkeys eat a little more grass. I think the turkey numbers, they can consume up to 30% of their diet from pasture, where chicken, I think, is 20 something. So they consume more, and they're just bigger birds, so they can do a little more damage to pasture. So it's, as they move through, if they're starting to scald this patch, I'll move the fencing out and give them some more. Or like I said, I keep them in the pen for a week and feed them other greens or something like that. So each year hasn't been the same. It's been different management every year.
So going forward, having raised the heritage breeds, having raised the broad-breasted, what would you get if you had to choose just one?
This was the only year we haven't done broad-breasted because we didn't have the room, and there's the demand from our returning customers is for heritage. So we will do them both going forward, and I will probably always do more broad-breasted just because, I would say 80% of our calls from new customers have no idea what a heritage bird is. They just want a turkey. So that's, a store-bought turkey's a broad-breasted. That's the closest thing to it. So, we'll always sell more of those, and we can sell those. We sold some last year through an aggregator. So, those are a lot easier to move than the heritage, I would say.
Mm-hmm. One of the enterprises you've done here in line with poultry is Pastured Poultry. Mm-hmm. How would you say Pastured Poultry on this scale has really been different than raising turkeys?
They're probably easier to manage. The turkeys are going to roam. If there's no fencing, the turkeys will be in the neighbor's area, where the chickens are more docile, I guess. They're easier to manage and to push around and to put them where I want them. I can draw them to an area with more grass just with their feed trough. I'll take it out there in the morning, feed them, they'll eat, and then they'll graze their way across that. So definitely easier to manage than turkeys.
What about from a customer demand standpoint, or what a customer will pay? If you're getting $9.50 for turkeys, what are they willing to pay for Pastured Poultry?
Whole birds we do at $5.95 a pound, and then the cuts all vary.
Okay.
So yeah.
And you've raised heritage or Red Rangers or Freedom Rangers, not heritage, but the Freedom Rangers, and you've also raised Cornish Cross. What's your thought on both those breeds and how they might be same, how they might be different?
For us, the Cornish just make a lot more sense. They're quicker, they're easier in a lot of aspects. I mean, plucking is one. They pluck so much easier. The scald is quick. The white feathers also make for a better presented product at the end. They are more cost effective as well. For cuts, I can get a much bigger breast off of a Cornish than I can a Freedom Ranger. The grow out time is shorter on them. The feed consumption is a little less. So we started with the Freedoms or Reds or whatever you want to call them. I think I did maybe 2 batches of those. And the demand isn't there. I can't charge extra for them. The customers, I think in 4 years, I've had 1 customer ask me, was knowledgeable about Freedom Rangers and the different types of meat birds. And our feedback, when we started doing Cornish, our feedback was so much better. A lot more compliments and enjoyment out of the Cornish.
Yeah, that's kind of different than what you hear some people say. They'll say, oh, the red birds, are more flavorful, but you haven't heard that from customers.
And I didn't taste that either, but I've heard that a lot. But yeah, we didn't get that.
When you go outbound to advertise your product, thinking turkeys, thinking poultry now, when you put a signage up, say at a market, is it pastured poultry? Is it grass-fed? Is it grass-based? Is it soy and corn-free? Is it organic? What are the things that customers resonate with that you see when you put it in signage?
We use all of that. I feel, it's kind of weird. I feel a little bit of guilt saying pastured because before I started this, my version of a pasture was just miles and acres of green grass. So I guess whatever your definition of a pasture is, we're, like we said, we're about 3/4 of an acre here. So, I use all of those terms, but what I try to do is explain the whole process to them. The importance of pasture and the importance of organic grain. To us, those are the 2 most important things. If an animal consumes 80% of its diet is grain, that grain needs to be very clean, in my opinion. So grass and organic grain are the 2 main conversation topics I have with people, and free ranging, sunlight, all that stuff. So I use all of that stuff. I would say corn and soy free is definitely have some diehard customers. We get some phone calls that are just like, that's their first question, are you corn and soy free? Or mainly soy, I would say. So yeah, we use all that stuff in our marketing.
And being in Arizona here, this is not a huge grain state, although there's a lot of ag. Looking around driving in here, there's a lot of just flat land. Is feed expensive? You mentioned turkey feed's expensive. Is poultry feed same thing?
Yeah.
Or chicken feed?
Yeah, there's nobody here. I'd love to find somebody local that could grow, what we need. But yeah, I get it out of Washington. That's the best deal I've found so far. And I buy it in bulk, so I get, a farm rate. But yeah, if I've often thought, if I wasn't doing organic, my profits would be through the roof. You're looking at a bag of regular layer feed at the store. I can go to Tractor Supply and find it on sale for $9.99 sometimes, where organic layer feed is going to be upper 20s to, pushing $30 at sometimes. So,
if you had to ballpark it, being sub an acre, what do you think is possible in terms of, gross revenue on this land base, given your climate, without overgrazing it, without pushing the land so hard? You're in a brittle area. Like, what could you realistically do here if somebody's thinking, I'm in Arizona, I have an acre of land, they're not going to make $50,000 gross off of this. What do you think you could do if everything went well, everything was planned out?
Oof, man, I'd have to do some math on what the enterprises are bringing in. I could definitely do more pastured poultry with the 2 pens. I can alternate on those 2 patches of grass. Oh man, I'd have to do math. I would say you could probably, poultry-wise, in the upper 20s into the 30s, I would say.
So that's a nice side income, and that's really what this has been for you up till this point, right? Yeah. It's been a way to transition. It's been something to do on the side. And what I like best about what you're doing here is you could easily look around and say, like, there's not a lot possible here, right? Like with the lack of rain, with the soils, but you've made it work. What do you think has been the key for you in terms of upping the learning curve? Like, is it just trying a bunch of stuff and seeing what works, getting rid of what doesn't? Is it book learning? Is it focusing in on one enterprise? How do you think you've gotten as much out of this as you have?
I would say I started with the learn it the hard way mentality, and that's evolved. And I would say book learning is probably the biggest. Like we want to get into pigs when we get the new land. I got 2 pig books. I'm halfway through one of them. So I would say now, same thing with pasture. I got to grow a bunch of pasture down there. So I think I've got 5 pasture books I've read through already. So yeah, finding, there's people that have done this already and that have done it right. So finding that knowledge and using it and applying it to the way that I'm going to use it, I think that's the approach I'm doing now, is more of the book learning.
And what's been the biggest mistake you've made? If you had a do-over, what would you change?
I would say the numbers thing. We wanted eggs, we wanted meat chickens, so it was one thing to use our supplemental income to raise food for ourselves, but to go the business route, as it evolved from that into a business, I would say I should have paid more attention to numbers. And it's everything from where you're getting your feed, if it's, even if you have to ship it from a further location, if it's a better price, to finding birds. I found a different source for my meat birds that's a lot cheaper and stuff. So doing the research and running the numbers is the biggest mistake. I should have done more of that beforehand.
And running those numbers is a way to refine that income. If you can get, say, 30 off a property like this, I'm guessing half of that, maybe you could clear at the end of the day in profit.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, we've been at the point of expansion every year. There's something else. I build, this year I'm trying a mobile pen that I can take with me. All the equipment that you need, like I need more processing crates. Those are $60, $70 a piece. So we haven't been pocketing as much because it's all going back into it. So we're trying to build it up to get everything we need. So now as we transition to this new land, we should have a lot of stuff in place already. The cooler trailer and all that stuff.
What are you most proud of? Looking around here, you are selling the property because you're moving on to bigger things, better things. But when you look back on this property, given your start, what do you have the most warm, fuzzy feeling about?
I would say like the versatility of it, or the uniqueness, how you can do so much with so little, figuring out how to utilize what you have. Like, this is 3/4 of an acre, and I think we're doing a lot more things than some other people are with more land. So, you work with what you have, and the more efficient you can get it, I think the better off you are. And I think that's what we've improved on each year. Sure. Is efficiency, utilization.
How do you view perfect versus good enough? Some people fall into that trap, like I got to make the perfect coop. You mentioned earlier, like, your coop's still not done 5 years later, but it works, it's functional. Mm-hmm. So how do you view those two, of having everything exactly how you want it versus good enough just to make it work?
So our first coop was the $1 million coop. We spent an abnormal amount of money on that coop. And I learned from that was stupid, because that coop doesn't perform any better than this coop that's got pallets. It's made of pallets. So profitability in this industry is very difficult, and you walk a fine line sometimes. So if you can repurpose something that works just the same, it's not going to be as pretty, but what's pretty is the income or the profitability that you're going to get. So yeah, that was a learning curve that I got over. I mean, we lived in town, and we had clean cars, and our carpet was clean, and moving out here, like, none of that happens now. But it's like, you get over that stuff. The perfectness of life isn't always practical, I guess.
How was that just lifestyle change? moving in town out to this is really the suburbs here. It actually feels pretty rural. I mean, there's not a lot around. How was that change for you, commuting into work, for your wife, just as a family aspect? Did it take some adjustment, and how'd you make it work?
Not at all. We loved it.
Okay.
We wanted to get, with my wife's illness, we wanted to slow things down. So getting out of the city, cookie cutter homes where your neighbor hears your conversation on the back porch, and none of that was enjoyable to us. So we wanted to be out more, out in the open. We wanted more. We wanted to see the coyotes, even though they have killed some animals. But we wanted all this. The drive into work, to me, it's my decompress time. I get my podcasts in, my books in, or I just ride in silence. It's only about a 40-minute drive now. It's going to get a lot longer, but we've enjoyed it. We didn't struggle with that at all.
You're approaching this as like a step approach. So you've gone from in town to here to now a bigger property, which you're in the process of purchasing and selling this one. Do you like that approach? Has that worked for you, just stepping up? Like, do you think you could have gone city to big property?
No, and I have realized that there's been so many closed doors. Like, I've found a property and I'm like, oh, this is perfect. We got to jump on this. We got to go. And I don't get it. Something falls through, and then I'm told why. Like, you weren't ready for that. Like, that was going to be a nightmare for you. You couldn't have done this and that over there. So the step approach, is the learning approach, has helped us greatly. I knew nothing about soil and animals coming out here. So yeah, so the slow start, I would have fallen on my face otherwise.